There's a version of your life that never happened, and you probably don't even know why. Not because you made one catastrophic mistake. Not because of bad luck or the wrong circumstances. But because of small things. Quiet things. Habits that felt completely fine in the moment. Habits that actually felt like relief or comfort or just normal. The dangerous ones never announce themselves. They don't look like self-destruction. They look like procrastination. They look like scrolling. They look like being busy. They look like waiting until you're ready. And by the time you notice the damage, months or years have passed. This video is about 5 of those habits. And there's a good chance at least one of them is running in your life right now. We're pretty good at recognizing obvious problems. Skipping the gym for a month. Spending money you don't have. Letting a relationship fall apart without addressing it. But the habits in this video are trickier because they don't feel like problems when you're doing them. They feel like you're managing. Like you're being realistic. Sometimes they even feel responsible. That's what makes them so effective at quietly blocking your progress. Your brain isn't raising any alarms. Psychologists call this comfortable decline, the gradual erosion of potential through consistently choosing what feels safe over what actually moves you forward. You don't fall apart. You just slowly drift. And the distance between where you are and where you could have been grows, one unremarkable day at a time. Habit number 1. Treating attention like it's free. Every day, you make hundreds of small decisions about where your attention goes. And most people treat those decisions as if they cost nothing. Open your phone while eating. Put on a podcast while working. Half-watch a video while texting. Keep 4 browser tabs open while writing an email. None of these feel harmful. In fact, multitasking feels productive. It feels like you're making the most of your time. But attention doesn't work that way. Research from Gloria Mark at UC Irvine found that after a distraction, it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully return to the original task. 23 minutes. And most people aren't getting interrupted just once a day. Here's what this adds up to. You go through entire days feeling busy, but never actually doing your best thinking. You're always operating at 60 or 70% of your real cognitive capacity because some part of your brain is always juggling something else. Over a career, this is enormous. The gap between someone who regularly does deep, focused work and someone who never does isn't just in output, it's in skill development, problem-solving ability, and creative thinking. Shallow attention produces shallow results, compounded over years. And the habit reinforces itself. The more you fragment your attention, the harder focused work becomes. Your brain literally rewires toward distraction. What used to be easy concentration starts to feel uncomfortable, even impossible. What to do instead? Pick one task. Close everything else. Work on it until it's done, or until you've hit a meaningful stopping point. Not with the TV on. Not with notifications buzzing. Even 90 minutes of genuinely undivided attention per day on something that matters compounds into serious progress over months. Guard it like it's your most valuable resource. Because it actually is. Habit number 2. Letting your standards quietly lower. This one is subtle. You probably won't notice it happening. It starts small. You meant to have a difficult conversation with someone, but you let it slide. You planned to finish that project properly, but good enough got submitted. You set a standard for yourself, financial, professional, personal, and then quietly lowered it when it got inconvenient. Once, then again. Then it becomes the pattern. The psychological term for this is standard drift, and it's one of the most effective ways a person can quietly undermine their own long-term outcomes. Because here's what most people don't realize. Your standards aren't just rules you follow. They're the lens through which you see yourself. When you consistently do less than you said you would, even in small ways, you start to believe that's who you are. Someone who doesn't follow through. Someone whose word, even to themselves, doesn't quite mean anything. And that belief starts affecting every future decision. You stop making bold commitments because some part of you already knows you won't honor them. It shows up financially when you let the savings plan you promised yourself keep getting pushed back. It shows up professionally when you keep accepting work that's beneath your ability because it's easier than pushing for more. It shows up in relationships when you keep tolerating things you said you wouldn't. Each individual moment seems forgivable. Collectively, they define the ceiling on your life. What to do instead? When you set a standard for yourself, treat it like a contract, especially the small ones. Because small kept promises rebuild self-trust. You don't need to be perfect. But when you say you're going to do something, do it. Even the version that's 80% of what you hoped, because that's infinitely better than the version where you quietly gave up and pretended it didn't matter. Habit number 3. Passive information without application. There's a type of person who reads every productivity book, watches every self-improvement video, listens to every motivational podcast, and their life barely changes. You might know someone like this. You might be this person. The issue isn't curiosity. Curiosity is great. The issue is using consumption as a substitute for action. When you learn something new, your brain releases a small amount of dopamine. It feels like progress. It feels like you're investing in yourself. But unless that knowledge gets applied in the real world, it doesn't actually change anything. It just becomes another thing you know, but don't use. Researchers call this the intention-action gap, and passive information is one of the main things that widens it. The more you learn without doing, the more comfortable the learning without doing becomes. You start to feel like a person who improves because you're consuming improvement content. But knowledge without use isn't self-improvement. It's entertainment wearing self-improvement clothes. There's another layer to this. Consuming information about a skill can make you feel more competent than you are, a well-documented psychological effect called the fluency illusion. Reading about how to run a business makes you feel like you understand business. Watching videos about fitness makes you feel like you're working on your health. The feeling of learning substitutes for the discomfort of actually doing. What to do instead? Adopt a one-thing rule. Before you consume new information on a topic, apply the last thing you learned. Read a chapter. Stop. Do one thing with it. Then continue. This creates a feedback loop between learning and reality, which is where actual growth happens. Habit number 4. Outsourcing your sense of direction. Most people spend very little time thinking about what they actually want. Instead, they absorb goals from their environment, from what their parents expected, what their peers are doing, what society signals as impressive, what social media rewards with attention. And then they spend years working hard toward those goals, while feeling vaguely hollow about it. This isn't a rare experience. A significant number of people who succeed by conventional measures report feeling disconnected from their own lives. Not because success is bad, but because they were pursuing someone else's definition of it. The habit isn't laziness. It's actually the opposite. It's working very hard without ever pausing to ask whether the direction is one you genuinely chose. There's a concept sometimes described as climbing the ladder against the wrong wall. You can be disciplined, productive, and consistent, and still end up somewhere you don't want to be, because you never stopped to verify that the ladder was leaning against the right place. This compounds over time in a specific way. The more you invest in a direction, the harder it becomes to question it. Sunk cost makes it psychologically painful to admit you've been chasing the wrong thing. So people don't. They push harder instead. The solution isn't radical reinvention or walking away from everything you've built. It's building the habit of periodic self-interrogation. Not weekly, even, but regularly asking yourself, whose goals am I actually living? If I had no external pressure at all, would I still want this? What to do instead? Set aside unstructured time, no phone, no input, to think about your own life. Not to consume other people's ideas about life. Just to think. Write down what you want from the next 5 years, in your own words, without performing for anyone. Treat your own sense of direction as something worth protecting, not something to be endlessly shaped by whoever's loudest. Habit number 5. Keeping your problems comfortable. You have problems you've been carrying for a long time. Maybe it's a financial pattern you keep repeating. A relationship dynamic you know isn't working. A career path that feels like a mismatch. A health habit you've been meaning to address for 2 years. And you haven't fixed them. But you also haven't fully suffered from them. They're manageable. Uncomfortable, but livable. Bad enough to complain about occasionally. Not bad enough to force real change. This is one of the most effective traps a person can find themselves in, what some researchers call the tolerable misery zone. When a problem is severe enough to drain your energy but not severe enough to demand action, it can sit in your life almost indefinitely. Humans are fundamentally motivated by pain and reward. When pain is acute, when a situation genuinely becomes unbearable, people change. When pain is chronic but mild, it gets absorbed into the background of life. You adapt. You cope. And adaptation feels like management, even when it's just coexistence with something that's slowly costing you. The opportunity cost of keeping these comfortable problems is massive. Energy you spend managing a situation you're not fixing is energy that can't go toward building something better. Mental bandwidth you use to cope with a problem you're not addressing is bandwidth you can apply to growth. What to do instead? Look at the problems you've had for more than 6 months. For each one, make a binary decision, commit to actively solving it, or consciously accept it as a permanent feature of your life. What you can't do is keep it in limbo. The tolerable misery zone only drains you when you let problems sit there unresolved. Clarity, even about hard truths, is almost always less exhausting than ambiguity. None of these habits make you a failure. They make you human. The point isn't to feel bad about them. It's to see them clearly, because you can't change what you haven't noticed. If even one of these hit close to home, that recognition matters. Most people go years without it. And here's something worth holding on to. The same compounding that works against you also works for you. Every time you protect your attention for something meaningful, every time you honor a small commitment to yourself, every time you apply what you've learned instead of just consuming more, those add up too. Quietly, gradually, in ways that won't feel dramatic until you look back and realize things are genuinely different. That version of your life that never happened, it still can. If this video was useful to you, consider subscribing to Goal Getters Guild. We go deep on the psychology behind performance, habits, and the quiet decisions that shape your future. Leave a comment with which habit resonated most. It helps more than you'd think.